Attention bowlers, we are going to get started from Leda Lanes at Nashua, New Hampshire. This is the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour. My name is Steve Kelly, and I will be your host and guide during this Class D North match between today's challengers, Bryan Hebert versus Todd Holbrook, here at Leda Lanes in Nashua, New Hampshire on lanes 5 and 6 on this Friday afternoon. Good as always to have you along with us. Originally live streamed here on March 8th, 2024, and available for rewatching anytime upon the conclusion of this match. If you are new to the ACST or Candlepin bowling in general, I'd like to extend a warm welcome to you and hope you enjoy this match and Candlepin bowling as a whole. If you are a returning viewer, welcome back. Your continued viewership is greatly appreciated. So we have Todd Holbrook bowling on lane 5. He just completed a 9-box for his inaugural frame of the day. And his second ball starts out strong with an 8 drop, leaving the 6 and the 8 pins on the deck with a piece of wood. Although that piece of wood appears to be fading out of position a little bit here as we take a closer look. But Todd Holbrook is looking at a potential spare opportunity if he can connect with the 6 pin in just the right way here. Let's see what Todd Holbrook can do. He chose to try to cap the wood, and he couldn't quite make it perform the sliding action that he was looking for. So Todd Holbrook now will be looking at an 8, 9, or 10 box. On lane 5, it's going to be an 8 box as he sails through the goalposts. We can't give him 3 pins, but how about 8? So that puts Todd Holbrook at 17 after 2. So to recap, Bryan Hebert is our away bowler. Todd Holbrook, the current bowler up, is the home bowler. They will bowl 5 strings of Candlepin bowling in which points will be awarded to the victor of each string, as well as additional points awarded to the bowler with the most grand total pinfall out of 14 available points. Todd Holbrook taking out just the 7 pin on his first ball for the spare shot. He takes out a few more. There's still 6 pins left on the deck, 4 down, 6 up, for a potential 10 box for Todd Holbrook on lane 5 at Leda Lanes in Nashua, New Hampshire. He is going to take a 7 box for 24 after 3. That is Todd Holbrook up on lane 5 at Leda Lanes in Nashua, New Hampshire. His seasonal record is 50 and 132 with 13 matches bowled so far. His season average is 92.3. His average variance across the season so far has been between 90.4 and 98.2. He is 4th place in the D Northern Conference Division 1, trailing Wynn Trafton, Sarah Wright, and Sherelle Newland. He is overall 15th in D North, and that is going to be a 9 box for Todd Holbrook, assuming he misses the 5 pin in the 3rd ball here. Todd Holbrook for a 9 or a 10 box. It's going to be a 9 box, putting him at 33 after 4 for Mr. Holbrook, with 1 to go before he sits, and Bryan Hebert will take the approach here at Leda Lanes in Nashua, New Hampshire. Good as always to have you along with us. If you're just tuning in, thanks for checking out this Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour match, this Class D Northern Conference match between Todd Holbrook and Bryan Hebert. Todd Holbrook nearly getting a strike with just the 10 pin left on the deck. But this is a potential layup spare if he can just collide with the 10 pin or the wood. But it looks like none of that is going to happen with just the 10 pin left on the deck. Todd Holbrook for a 10 box now. And it looks like he's going to get that 10 box for 43 at the half. He's going to sit at 43 after 5. And we will now be taking a look at Bryan Hebert for the first time today. Bryan Hebert coming down from Manchester, New Hampshire. His home lanes is Lakeside Lanes in Manchester, New Hampshire. Originally from Ringe, New Hampshire, though. Bryan Hebert is currently 78 and 104 for the season with 13 matches bowled. Season average of 96. That is 23rd best in the D class, with a season average variance of 96.5 to 100.8. across all of his matches bowled so far. He is 4th place in D North Division 4, similar to Todd Holbrook. He's behind Kevin Martell, Bill Olson, and Jonathan Hogan. Generally 12th place in the D Northern Conference wildcard standings overall, needing to pass Kevin Martell, Ray McAllister, and Sherelle Newlands, as well as Chris Sammons. Bryan Hebert's high single is 128. His high series is 529. Bryan Hebert will conclude his inaugural box here at Leda Lanes with an 8. Bryan Hebert has 19 strikes, 107 spares, and 89 10 boxes. Bryan Hebert's perfect box percentage is 33% with 6,240 seasonal total pins. Bryan Hebert looking at a left side Canadian hay bale. That's a left side check mark plus the 8 pin. Taking out 2 left, he's now left with the 2, the 4, and the 7 pins on lane 5 here at Leda Lanes in Nashua, New Hampshire. For a 10 box, Bryan Hebert will take a 7 box instead, missing all 3 of the target pins for 15 after 2 here at Leda Lanes. As I said, Bryan has 6,240 seasonal total pins. With Bryan, it has been feast or famine this season. Sometimes he takes double-digit points, between 10 or 12 in a match. And look at that nice 9 drop by Bryan Hebert, leaving all but the 6 pin. But otherwise, Bryan Hebert has been taking between 0 and 4 points, at least as of February 29th, before this match. Bryan going for the spare, and like Todd Holbrook, he missed that single pin spare on the right side. Seems to be a bit of a challenge for both our bowlers today. Bryan now going for a 9 or a 10 box. I think he's going to elect to call it a 9 box, as he has fouled it. That puts Bryan at 24 after 3. With 2 to go before our bowlers sync up with one another at the half. Bryan Hebert on lane 5 for a potential strike if he can hit it right, but he misses the pocket to the left. The 4 horsemen right side plus the 7 pin, the 1, the 3, the 6, the 10, and the 7 pin on the deck. A piece of wood is behind the 1 pin. For a spare, that is a spare for Bryan Hebert, the first spare of the match. Open 34 and 4. For Mr. Hebert after that fouled 9 box in the previous one. So he was close to 2 marks in a row had he connected with that single pin spare opportunity in the third, but unfortunately had to settle for a 9. Bryan Hebert now filling the spare. On lane 5, Leda Lanes. It's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's going to be a 4 fill for Bryan. I think he was banking on a few more pins falling, but unfortunately, that just wasn't what it was meant to be. Bryan for another spare. Will he get it? That's another spare. That's a second spare in a row for Bryan Hebert. 48 open after 5 boxes for 2 spares in a row. Could have been 3 in a row, but he got 2 in a row instead, and he's going to sit on open 48 after 5. Todd Holbrook now going to be taking lane 6. The first bowler to take lane 6 for the first time today here at Leda Lanes in Nashua, New Hampshire. I'm going to mute for just one moment here. Todd Holbrook on lane 6, nearly a strike for his opening ball on lane 6. Sometimes a change of lane is all you really need some days. But Todd Holbrook now is looking at a potential single pin spare on lane 6. And will the piece of wood come and get it? He'll tap it, but not quite retrieve it. So Todd Holbrook now is looking at a 10 box opportunity. The 2 pin on the deck on lane 6. It's going to be a 9 box for Todd Holbrook to start out his second half, putting him at 52 after 6 for Todd Holbrook. Bryan Hebert has been catching up to Todd Holbrook's 43 half, as he has an open 48 half with the 2 marks. For an early potential advantage for Bryan Hebert, Todd Holbrook, first ball on the head pin, leaving a right side check mark. That's the 5, the 3, the 6, and the 10 pins on the right side. Todd Holbrook's high single is 120. His high series is 509. He has 5 strikes, 91 spares, and 96 tens. As of the time of this writing and this broadcast, his perfect box percentage is 30%. Seasonal total pins 5,998. That is a 9 box for Todd Holbrook. 61 after 7 for Mr. Holbrook. He has a strength in spares and 10 boxes this season. That's where Todd does exceptionally well. Todd Holbrook dropping 7 on lane 6, the back row pin that's left on the deck, having some trouble falling. Todd Holbrook, the 1, the 3, and the 9 pins. Will he get that spare, but he'll miss everything. So that's going to be a potential 7, 8, 9, or 10 box opportunity for Todd Holbrook. Todd Holbrook's perfect box percentage has increased from 27% to 30% compared to the last time I covered him. So Todd Holbrook making a market improvement. That's a 7 box for Mr. Holbrook. Still fishing for a mark. He's at 68 after 8 here at Leda Lanes in Nashua, New Hampshire. Todd Holbrook has a minimum of 4 spares in every match so far this season. He averages 0.38 strikes per match, 7 spares per match, and 7.38 tens per match. After looking at all of his past matches and stats analysis, Todd Holbrook's first ball takes out a few pins. He's left with a decent amount left, but now that's going to be the first mark of the day for Todd Holbrook, taking out the right side 4 horsemen plus additional pins in the back row and the 7 pin. So Todd Holbrook is at 78 open after 9 with an extra ball to fill that 78 in the 9th. Todd Holbrook looking to get some bonus pins right now. He averages 92.3, and unfortunately that was a bit of a wild pitch. That's a 1 fill on that spare, putting him at 79 after 9 for Mr. Todd Holbrook. Holbrook for a remedial ball on the pocket this time, left with 10 pin and the 4 pin. Now for a 10 box, Holbrook will take an 8 box, concluding his first game at 87. It's going to be an 87 for Todd Holbrook to conclude the first. Bryan Hebert sitting at 48 open. 48 open after all has been said and done so far. So I just adjust the pin can here. Bryan Hebert filling a spare now. Second spare in a row. Bryan Hebert's spare fill is going to be more than 5. It's going to be 6, leaving the 4 horsemen left side. That's 54 after 5 for Bryan Hebert now that all has been said and done. Bryan Hebert for a spare now. It's going to be another spare. His 3rd mark in a row. 3rd spare in a row for Bryan Hebert. That's open 64 after 6. Here at Leda Lanes in Nashua, New Hampshire, Bryan Hebert has found his comfort zone early in this match so far. Bryan Hebert has been struggling for the past couple of matches for sure, with a season record of 78 and 104. In 4th place in the Class D North Division 4 of the ACST. Bryan Hebert has... Just pausing for brief lane maintenance there. Bryan Hebert has the 8th most spares in the D class. He has 4 games over 500. He averages 1.46 strikes per match, averages 8.23 spares per match, and 6.85 tens per match. Bryan Hebert filling a spare. Narrowly off the head pin, and that's going to be a 4 fill. 4 horsemen left side, plus the 9 and the 10 for Mr. Hebert. Let's see if he can get a spare. He's been a bit of a spare machine today early. That ball bouncing a little bit, hesitating to drift to the left. Taking out just 1. 4 horsemen left side, plus the 10 pin for Bryan Hebert. This is lane 6 at Leda Lanes. Takes out 1 more for the road. That's a 6 box for Bryan, halting his spare streak, but he's at 74 after 7. 74 after 7 for Bryan Hebert. Bryan Hebert averages the same number of points per match regardless of away versus home. He seems to be averaging 6 points per match so far. The location doesn't seem to matter for Bryan as of this season. Bryan taking out 5.5. It's going to be 6 pins for the first ball of the 8th box. Felt he kind of deserved a few more pins than what he ended up getting. Well, let's see if Bryan can get a spare. Will he get another spare? That is his 4th spare of the match for Bryan. Bryan being the spare machine, flying the spare plane today. That's open 84 and 8 for Bryan now. He has 3 pins off of Todd Holbrook for the tie. But this fill may take care of that. Let's see how Bryan does. Filling this spare, his 4th spare of the match. He's on just barely off the head pin, but he is going to have a 5 fill for 89 after 8. 89 after 8 for Bryan Hebert with a potential, I would say it's a medium difficulty spare opportunity. Let's see what Bryan can do to get it. He nearly gets it, but that failure to collide with a head pin was the result of the lack of a spare, and of course the reason the final pin stayed up. Just Bryan Hebert versus the head pin for a 10 box. He's going to take a 9 box. That's going to put Bryan over average. 98 after 9 with 1 additional box to go. Bryan Hebert averages 96 so far for this season. Bryan Hebert recently faced off against Sarah Wright at Lakeside Lanes in round 13. He took 4 points to Sarah's 10. 3 games over 100 with a 477 series. Bryan Hebert's opening ball is a light tap on the pins, dropping just 4. With the 1, the 2, the 5, the 7, the 9, and the 8 pins on the deck. Bryan Hebert for a spare, but he misses off the right side. Doesn't collide with the head pin, just takes a pin out of the back row. It was the second time this season that Bryan averaged exactly 96.0 when he bowled Sarah Wright at Lakeside Lanes in round 13. Bryan will take a 9 box. That puts him at 107 for the first game. We are done the first game. Bryan takes 2 points so far with that 107 after 10. Todd Holbrook with a 1 mark 87. Todd Holbrook struggling to find his footing here at the beginning, but still plenty of bowling here to go, folks. Bryan Hebert already with 4 marks, 4 spares already, and we're not even started the second game yet. So Bryan Hebert having a great opening game here. But we're moving on to the second game here at the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour. Todd Holbrook starting out on lane 5 with a right side half Worcester. And Todd Holbrook has some work to do to get a spare off of this. He needs to collide with the pocket, the 1-2 pocket, or the invisible 1-3 pocket. But instead, he completes the full Worcester round trip with the Worcester left side in addition to the Worcester right side. So it's only 4 down so far. This is definitely a frustrating shot, and it's tough to remediate. That's going to be a 5 box for Todd Holbrook to start out the second game here. Todd Holbrook. Take a look at Todd Holbrook's stats again in case you missed it. Todd Holbrook is currently 15th in Class D North with a season record of 50 and 132 after 13 matches bowled. Todd Holbrook has been improving in his perfect box percentage statistics, and Todd Holbrook punches out a right side half Worcester once again. That's a repeat of the first ball from the previous box. Let's see if he can cancel his round trips to Worcester, and he does, leaving the 1, the 5, and the 8 pins on the deck. Todd Holbrook, Leda Lanes. This is lane 5 in Nashua, New Hampshire. Todd Holbrook for a 7, 8, 9, or 10. Looks like it's going to be an 8 box for Todd Holbrook. That's 13 after 2 for Mr. Holbrook. Todd Holbrook recently faced off versus Bill Olson in round 13 at Lakeside Lanes. He took 4 points to Bill's 10. The final string was Todd's best at a 114, 6 pins off of his all-time high single, I might add. Todd Holbrook dropping 6, dropping 7. The 1, the 8, and the 10 pins are left on the deck for probably a decent spare opportunity. If you can collide with the head pin just the right way, maybe just lightly tap it on the right side. Don't cap that wood, though, because that will ruin your chances of taking the head pin out. Ooh, I heard a ba-bump, ba-bump, a bounce. Looks like Todd Holbrook was at the mercy of the ball bounce there, taking out all but the single head pin. Didn't collide with the object pin as he was probably aiming for. Todd Holbrook for a 10 box. That will be a 10 box for Todd Holbrook. Todd Holbrook averages 7.38 tens per match. That puts him at 23 after 3. Todd Holbrook has a slightly better record of points per match when bowling away at 3.85 points per match versus when bowling at home with just a 3 points per match average as of March 7th. So Todd Holbrook will have a little bit of work to do today based on prior stats, but I have faith in him. Todd Holbrook with a 7 drop after the first ball, spare opportunity. He misses the 1, the 2, and the 4 pins. Left side half Worcester minus the 7 pin. At Leda Lanes in Nashua, New Hampshire. Todd Holbrook for the 10 box. That's the second 10 box in a row. Double 10s, double X. That's 33 after 4 for Todd Holbrook. This is the first half of the second game with 1 to go for Todd Holbrook before we switch back over to Bryan Hebert. Let's now look at Todd Holbrook's stats while we have a couple of free seconds. Todd Holbrook starting out on lane 5 for the first ball of the final box. Hits a little bit full on the head pin, leaving the 2, the 4, and the 10 pins on the deck. Colliding with a 2-4 pocket should be enough to take it out. Let's see what Todd Holbrook can do here for a spare. I think it is possible. You just have to hit the pocket just the right way, and that ball is on its way, but it hits the right side of the 2-4 pocket and not the left side. The 10 pin is left on lane 5 for a 10 box with a tricky piece of wood in front of it for Todd Holbrook. Might have some trouble aiming for that pin as a result, and it looks like he just sails to the right into the gutter for a 9 box, 42 after 5 for Todd Holbrook to conclude the first half of the second game. Puts him at 42 after 5. He had 87 in the first game. Bryan Hebert with a banner 107, a 4 mark 107 in the first game, 4 spares. It was nearly 5 spares actually, but one of those didn't go. Bryan Hebert is opening ball, another bounce, a similar bounce to Todd Holbrook's, but this one worked in his favor. He drops 9, leaving all but the 7 pin with a perpendicular piece of wood across the 7 pin. Multiple pieces of wood that can help him. I think this is going to be a spare. And that will be a spare for Bryan Hebert. No, not a spare. Okay, didn't want to necessarily say if that was or not going to be a spare. I thought it could have gone either way, but Bryan elected to mark it as a foul. Always good for bowler integrity. Definitely not a bad thing to self-police on those. So Bryan fouled a 9, potential spare, but ball went to the gutter, collided with the gutter before collided with the pin, so that's a foul. So Bryan drops 7, the 1, the 2, and the 10 pins for a spare. Let's see if Bryan can get a spare off of this. 1, 2, 10 split. And he takes the 2 out, leaving the 1 and the 10 on the deck. Bryan Hebert, 8, 9, or 10 box opportunity now. Bryan Hebert will take an 8 box. That's 17 after 2 for Bryan. Continuing our conversation about his previous match versus Sarah Wright at Lakeside Lanes in round 13. Bryan's 5th game was a 69 and a strange outlier out of a series of otherwise really good 4 games. I think he just ran out of steam at the end. I remember talking with him earlier, and I think he said his wrist was just giving him some trouble in the 5th game. He had 3 strikes, 8 spares, and 7 tens in that match. That was in round 13. Bryan Hebert's home lanes are Lakeside Lanes in Manchester, New Hampshire. Technically, Bowling Acres Grill in Peterborough, New Hampshire is closer to him, though, geographically. He lives in Ringe, New Hampshire. Bryan Hebert, I love telling the story. Bryan Hebert once threw a 4-bagger, but didn't count for anything. He did it during warm-ups in the Wednesday night mixed league at Leda Lanes after being taunted to do so by his teammate, Dan Lang. He threw it, amazed his teammate, but he realized it was worthless, as it wasn't during normal league play, as he contemplated life under the crushing laughs of his teammate. And Bryan will take another 9 box for 26 after 3. Bryan Hebert Jr. is the son of Bryan Hebert Sr. and Marta Hebert, both very active bowlers in the 1980s and 1990s. Maybe the 70s? Someone verify that for me. Both of which still bowl today. We bowl in the Sunday Night Mixed League at Lakeside Lanes. Prior to that, the Bryans and myself bowled in the Wednesday Night League at Leda Lanes prior to mid-2020. Bryan Hebert for a spare, and he collides with the pocket, but a little bit too full, leaving the 7 and the 8 pin. Probably is going to pick which pin he wants to get for a 9 box, and he's going to take that 9 box. 3 9s in this game for Bryan Hebert after 4 boxes. 35 after 4 with 1 to go before he sits. No marks for either bowler yet in the second game here at Leda Lanes in Nashua, New Hampshire. 42 half for Todd Holbrook. Bryan Hebert 35 after 4. Drops 5. So he's at 40 now with 2 more to tie Todd Holbrook at the half. See if he can get a spare off of this. 4 horsemen right side plus the 8 pin. What will Bryan get? Bryan will take a few out. 2 pins left on the deck for a potential 8, 9, or 10 box. It's going to be a higher half than Todd Holbrook, though, at this point. 8, 9, or 10. It's going to be an 8 for 43 after 5 for Bryan Hebert versus Todd Holbrook's 42 after 5. This is the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour, the Class D Northern Conference in Week 14. Away bowler Bryan Hebert from Lakeside Lanes challenging Todd Holbrook, the home bowler, here at Leda Lanes in Nashua, New Hampshire. Todd Holbrook is back up on the deck on lane 6, and he's going to be starting the second half of the second game here. Todd Holbrook, first ball of the 6th frame. Very favorable leave if that 4-pin decides to fall, but it's wiggling. It's wiggling. I'm afraid I think it's not going to fall. Very stubborn 4-pin. 4-pin and the 10-pin hanging out on the right side. He's looking at a spare opportunity. It's going to be a tough one. Let's see what Todd Holbrook can do. It's a good bid. Piece of wood still rolling. That wobbly 4-pin, though, resilient is the best word I can describe that. Todd Holbrook looking at a 10 box now. Todd Holbrook will get a 10 box. That's 52 after 6 for Todd Holbrook. Todd Holbrook, his home lanes here at Leda Lanes in Nashua, New Hampshire, where we are broadcasting today. This is Todd Holbrook's second season of the ACST. So no longer a rookie. Todd Holbrook's opening ball of the 7th frame is a 6-drop. 6-drop for a potential spare. Let's see what Todd Holbrook can do. Let's take a zoomed in look at that. Todd Holbrook, another hop, skip, and a jump for that ball on that release. The 1 and the 9 pins left on the deck. 8, 9, or 10 box for Todd Holbrook. So we are at Leda Lanes in Nashua, New Hampshire, opened in 1959. Leda Lanes is a family-owned and operated Candlepin bowling center located in Nashua, New Hampshire. Founded by the late Edgar and Ray Semino, passed down through Sean Howard, Linda Howard, Alexis Booley, along with Dave Semino, Matt Susi, Joe Booley, and countless other hardworking folks maintaining a busy center with tons of leagues, cornhole, birthday party options, and glow bowling, of course, in a whole entirely separate building. It's too much for one building. Leda's Lighthouse is located across the parking lot. It's the second building specifically tailored towards glow bowling and birthday parties. Having worked there on the day it opened, I can vouch for the awesome effects, music, and atmosphere you'll encounter when walking in there at Leda's Lighthouse. Todd Holbrook looking at a difficult spare opportunity. He's got the 7, the 8, the 7 and the 8, and the 6 pins. Takes out the 7 and the 8, leaving just the 6 pin. So he's looking at a 9 or 10 box here in the 8th. That's going to be a 10 box for Todd Holbrook. That's 71 after 8. He is still fishing for a mark, but yet Bryan Hebert has not caught fire in this game just yet. Leda Lanes' main building features all-wood approaches with all-wood lanes, along with sensor-based automatic scoring. Scoring software known as Pro Score version 25 on this half of the house. It is outgoing because it's going to be replaced by Cubica AMF automatic scoring systems, which lanes 19 through 36 already have installed on the other side of the building. But we are on the older score side today. That's a spare for Todd Holbrook, the first spare of the game for him. That's an open 81 in 9. Todd Holbrook had 1 spare in the previous game as well towards the end, but he had a 1 fill, so Todd Holbrook is looking to reconcile that, maybe get something better than a 1 fill. I know he'll feel better if he can nail this one. Todd Holbrook filling a mark, and wow, just like the last time, he misses it entirely. That's a 0 fill, unfortunately, so that's just the equivalent of a 10 box now. 81 and 9 for Todd Holbrook. This is the second ball of the 10th frame. Takes out 3 more for potential 84 if he doesn't take any more, but let's see what Todd Holbrook can do here. Todd Holbrook's final ball of the second game. It's going to be a 9 box for a 90. Todd Holbrook with a 90, still slightly under average. He averages 92.3 for the season. For a 2-game total of 177 for Todd Holbrook. But we'll be switching back to Bryan Hebert here now as we pause for some lane maintenance once again. While we do that, why don't we take a look at some standings overall. So both bowlers are fourth place in their respective divisions right now. Bryan Hebert with 78 and 104, fourth place in Division 4. Todd Holbrook with similar struggles in Division 1 with a 50 and 132 season win-loss ratio standings. Here in the wild card, they're both fishing for a wild card spot. I think it's more likely for Bryan Hebert at this point, but never say never. Bryan Hebert needs to get a couple of 14-0 matches in order to get back into the wild card positions. But anyways, Bryan Hebert takes out very few pins on lane 6, starting out his second half at Leda Lanes in Nashua, New Hampshire. He dropped 4, that is. Taking out a couple more. The 1 and the 9 pins are left on the deck on lane 6. And it is going to be a doozy of a 10-box opportunity. He just has to hit the 1 pin full enough, but hope the piece of wood agrees with that collision. But he's not going to hit any of them. That's going to be an 8-box for Bryan Hebert. That's 51 after 6 for Bryan. Bryan is a secondary manufacturing lead at Microspec Corporation, which produces medical tubing and focuses on extrusion technology. Bryan manages a team of folks who help produce these parts, so the next time you are hooked to something medical, check to see if it consists of microspec parts. Bryan dropping 7 with the 2, the 4, and the 5 pins on the deck, a 3-pin triangle for a spare opportunity for Bryan. Will he get it? He will get it. That's a nice spare for Bryan. First spare of the match for him. That's 61 open after 7 for Mr. Bryan Hebert Jr. Previously, Bryan worked at Supreme as a technical coordinator. Bryan is great at rigging up audio equipment and providing recommendations for microphones and such. He studied communications at Keene State College. Bryan Hebert's filling that spare with 8, leaving the 5 and the 10 pins. Call that the setback. The setback shot with no wood except for the one in front of the 10 pin. Let's see if Bryan can take this out. It's going to be a very difficult shot. Don't really blame him no matter what happens. Takes out the 5 pin, leaving the 10 pin. So he's at 69 after 7. Compare that to 61 after 7 for Todd Holbrook. Bryan Hebert for the 10 box. He will get that 10 box. That's 79 after 8. He needs to get to 90 or better to get points this game. With 2 boxes to go here at Leda Lanes in Nashua, New Hampshire. Leda Lanes features 36 lanes, 18 on each side of the house. I would argue that each side of the building has a bit of a different personality and feel to it, which would only make sense considering lanes 1 through 18 are from a different bowling alley and added on later, technically. Personally, I believe lanes 19 and 36 are the better of the 2 halves, providing much more satisfying and exciting pin action as well as scoring, though Dave Semino claims 9 and 10 are the lanes to bowl on, says those are the highest scoring in the house. Bryan Hebert with a 7 box, leaving the 1, the 2, and the 8 pins on the deck for 86 after 9. With 1 to go, he needs 4 to tie, 5 to win this game. Let's see what Bryan Hebert can do. Bryan Hebert, opening ball, the 10th game. That will be the second game for Bryan. That's a 5 drop, so he has taken the second game. Batting 1,000 so far. That's 4 points for the day for Bryan Hebert with 3 games to go. Let's see if Bryan can get a spare off of this. For the spare, he oddly just takes out 1 pin. Actually 2 pins, I believe. Leaving the 1, the 7, and the 8 pins. Bryan for the 10 box. Another bouncy ball. It's going to be a 9 box. There must be something on the lane or something because both of our bowlers have had some bouncing problems today. So Bryan will conclude with a 95 after the second, beating Todd Holbrook by 5, who bowled a 90. Bryan Hebert with 4 points for the day so far out of a possible 14. Todd Holbrook struggling to find a rhythm. But we are going to be moving on to the 3rd game here at the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour. 3 out of 5. If you are just joining us, pleasure to have you along with us here at this Friday afternoon Class D North match of the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour at Leda Lanes in Nashua, New Hampshire. My name is Steve Kelly. Pleasure to have you along. I hope this broadcast finds you well. Todd Holbrook on lane 5, dropping 7 for his opening ball of the third game. The 4, the 7, and the 8 pins are left with a potential spare opportunity. Potential spare opportunity, that's the phrase of the day. Todd Holbrook for a spare on lane 5, and he sails through the middle, through the void, and the void stares right back at him. So now he's looking at a 7, 8, 9, or 10 box now. Todd Holbrook. Holbrook fires, and he takes one more out for the road. That's an 8 box. 8 after 1 for Todd Holbrook. Here's your score update. After 3 games, Todd Holbrook, it was at 177. After 3 games, Bryan Hebert was at 202. Bryan Hebert rolled a 107 and then a 95. Excuse me, 2 games, not 3. Bryan Hebert has a 2-game total of 202. And same for Todd Holbrook. Todd Holbrook chopping wood on lane 5. 5 pins down, 5 pins up. Lane 5 for the 10 box. He's going to take one more out. He's going to take a 6 box for a 14 after 2 for Mr. Holbrook. Everyone involved here, from the bowlers to the staff you cannot see all around me, appreciate your viewership and interest in this live stream, as well as Candlepin Bowling as a whole. Lanes 33 and 34 at Leda Lanes in particular are somewhat famous for being the lanes featured during the tapings for Candlepin Stars and Strikes on WNDS TV 50 in the late 90s and early 2000s after the show transitioned away from the late Park Place lanes in Windham, New Hampshire. The show saw a rebranding of graphics, music, intros, and hosts, with Dick Lutz and Mike Moran replacing Doug Brown and Dan Murphy. The show was hosted at Leda Lanes until it ended in 2005. That's an 8 box for Todd Holbrook, by the way. After WNDS itself was wound down after a series of buyouts and overall transitions when it came to television and entertainment technologies changing, you know, the whole thing with analog to digital, traditional TV mostly kind of dying out, all that stuff. Well, now we're back streaming online and in a new era. Same familiar location. Lanes 33 and 34 even still have the same lighting fixtures up in the ceiling from when they were still used for Candlepin Stars and Strikes. And they're still used from time to time when newer shows are filmed here, such as the newly rebooted Candlepin Skins and Candlepins for Cancer. Speaking of Candlepin Skins, if you are in the area at Leda Lanes and want to stop by tomorrow morning, we are filming new episodes of Candlepin Skins at Leda Lanes. In fact, this might be a good opportunity to kind of show you some other stuff. Actually, we'll show you when we have a free moment at the changeover at the half. Todd Holbrook is at 30 after 4. Opening ball of the 5th game, 5th box. Drops everything but the 4 horsemen right side, but one of the 4 horsemen falls. He's got the 1, the 6, and the 10 pins to contend with for a spare. And it looked good. Bryan even stated so, and wow, looks like Todd Holbrook got a little bit robbed there. Now he's just looking at the 6-10 for a potential 10 box for Todd Holbrook on lane 5. It's going to be an 8 box for Todd Holbrook. 4 8s and 1 6 for a 38 half for Todd Holbrook. Somewhat frustrating half for Todd. Still searching for a mark, and he couldn't quite get it. Anyways, to complete my thought from earlier, if you are looking for some other Candlepin content and you liked this, check out 2 YouTube channels. One's called Candlepin Bowling Network. The other one's called Candlepin Corner. Candlepin Bowling Network will be live with the Friday Night Pro League later this evening. And Candlepin Corner airs episodes of Candlepin Skins. There are prior episodes of Candlepin Skins already up on the Candlepin Corner YouTube channel, and there are brand new episodes of Skins going to be filmed tomorrow live. They won't be streamed, but they will be filmed live if you want to stop by and see them to get a sneak peek of what's going on in the Candlepin Skins world. Bryan Hebert dropping 7, still working on taking out a few more, but he's going to take an 8 box for his opening string of the 3rd game. Opening box of the 3rd string, that is. Here's where we are in case you missed Todd Holbrook's first half. Todd Holbrook had 38 after 5 here in the 3rd game. Bryan Hebert now on lane 5. He's throwing the ball a little bit harder, and I don't know if that's necessarily benefiting him right now. Only taking out a couple of pins here and there. It looks like 4 down. 6 up, 4 down on lane 5. Taking out a few more, hitting the object pin, but taking out everything but that stubborn little 5-pin right in the center of the lane for a potential 9 or 10 box opportunity for Bryan Hebert Jr. Lane 5, he fires, and he takes a 9 box for 17 after 2. Compare that to 14 after 2 for Todd Holbrook. So Leda Lanes in Nashua, New Hampshire. It just wouldn't be a league at Leda Lanes without Dave Simino on the microphone going, "Attention bowlers, please finish your warm-up frames. We'll be changing the scoring in just a moment." That's Dave Simino most nights here at Leda Lanes for almost all the leagues. Leda Lanes has a bar called Kegler's Den, just a few feet to the left of us on lanes 5 and 6. Offers an impressive number of taps, drinks, food, entertainment, karaoke, and plenty of other offerings. And that's a spare for Bryan Hebert in the third. After an 8 drop, that's 27 after 3 plus a ball for Bryan Hebert. Take a look at the scores real quick. 27 open for Bryan Hebert after 3. 22 closed for Todd Holbrook after 3. Hebert filling a spare. He fires off to the left of the headpin, but has a generous drop of 7. Putting him at 34 after 3. The 1, the 5, and the 9 pins left on the deck for Bryan Hebert on lane 5. Bryan Hebert going for a spare, and he didn't like the way he threw that ball. I heard him audibly call an audible when he released on that. He collided with the object pin, but it just kind of danced around the other 2. He's going to take an 8 box for 42 after 4. So Kegler's Den, according to Microsoft Copilot AI, a kegler is a term used to refer to a participant in a bowling game. The term originates from the German word kegel, which means bowling pin, believe it or not. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but hey. The term is often used in a humorous or informal context when referring to the modern game of bowling. So if you enjoy bowling, you should consider yourself a kegler. Bryan Hebert looking at the center diamond plus the 10 pin. Takes out 1 more pin from that center diamond, leaving the 1, the 5, the 3, and the 10 pins on lane 5 in Nashua, New Hampshire. For a 10 box, Bryan Hebert is going to conclude his first half with an 8 for 50 after 5. And that will do it for the first half of the third game for Bryan Hebert. We are exactly at the halfway point now. 50 after 5 for Bryan Hebert, 38 after 5 for Todd Holbrook. Bryan Hebert currently sitting at 252 with 4 guaranteed points for the first 2 games. Todd Holbrook sitting at a 2.5 game total at 215 with no points to his name so far this game. But let's see what Todd Holbrook can do now on lane 6, starting at the 6th frame. And he's looking at the 3 and the 6 pins on lane 6. Todd Holbrook for the spare, and is going to be a spare. He narrowly gets away with it, stealing that final pin. Open 48 after 6 for Todd Holbrook. 48 plus a ball after 6. We're not currently looking at it or anywhere near it in this broadcast, but there's a fun fact about the wall next to lane 19 at Leda Lanes in particular. Ooh, that is going to be a 2 fill for Todd Holbrook on that spare. He's been having trouble with the fills on these spares all match so far. So my dad recalls a story in which Sean Howard told him sometime in either the 90s or the 2000s, at some point there, he had to install some kind of barrier material between the carpeting over the brick wall behind it due to an influx of bowlers attempting to punch the wall in rage and then hurting their hand. I know one guy in particular, it wasn't on that wall, but it was on the wall to the left of lane 1. He punched the wall so hard he broke his hand. I think his name was Jake or something. It was over 10 years ago at this point during a summer league, but Jake, or whatever your name is, if you're watching, don't punch walls, okay? Todd Holbrook took a 5 box after that 2 fill, putting him at 55 after 7. Todd Holbrook still getting unfavorable leaves in the first ball. He takes out only what appears to be 3 with 7 on the deck, and he takes out a couple more. The 1, the 5, the 3, the 7, and the 10 pins left on lane 6 for Todd Holbrook. Looking for a 10 box, hoping he can get something out of this. He's left with the high-low jack, a 7 box for Todd Holbrook. That's 62 after 8. So, do you think Candlepin bowling looks fun? If you like what you see today and you want to try it out for yourself, there's plenty of centers all around New England. Go to candlepin.org and click Go Bowling to find your nearest center and check it out for yourself. We're in Nashua, New Hampshire on 460 Amherst Street at Leda Lanes. No, sorry, not 460, 340 Amherst Street. I worked at 460 Amherst Street. It's a 7-6 drop for Todd Holbrook, and he takes 2 more out for the road. That's the 1 and the 8 pins on lane 6 for an 8, 9, or 10 box opportunity for Mr. Todd Holbrook in the 9th in the 3rd game here. He is going to take a 9 box for 71 after 9. Todd Holbrook having a bit of an off day today. He's been averaging lower than he normally does of 92.3 for the season. Todd Holbrook has some trouble with getting points at home in particular. He seems to average slightly more points when he's bowling away at 3.85 points per match versus 3 points per match when bowling at home. Todd Holbrook dropping 6, leaving the right side check mark, the 5, the 3, the 6, and the 10 pins, and that's a nice, pretty spare by Todd Holbrook. The first game of the match where he's bowled more than 1 mark, and hopefully he can get a decent fill out of this. He's been struggling to get fills above 3 today. He's sitting at 81 plus a ball. He could potentially have a 91 game, which could potentially be the best game he throws today. Let's see what he gets. He's going to fill it with 5 for an 86 after all is said and done for Todd Holbrook for a 3-game total of 263 for Todd Holbrook. Bryan Hebert with 5 to go. He has 50 after 5. And we're now going to see what Bryan Hebert can do on lane 6 at Leda Lanes in Nashua, New Hampshire. Bryan Hebert has been doing a good job with a lot of spares and filling spares, following up spares with more spares, but neither bowler has bowled strikes today. So we're still looking for the first strike of the match. Bryan Hebert dropping 6, leaving the 1, the 3, the 6, and the 9 pins on lane 6 at Leda Lanes. Bryan Hebert fires. He's off to the right of the head pin, leaving the 1 and the 6 pins on the deck. 1 and the 6 pins on the deck for Bryan Hebert for a potential 8, 9, or 10 box. What's he going to get? That's going to be a 9 box for Bryan Hebert. That's 59 after 6. If you're just tuning in, thank you for checking out this Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour match between away bowler Bryan Hebert and home bowler Todd Holbrook at Leda Lanes in Nashua, New Hampshire. Appreciate you checking this out. If you're a brand new viewer and you have no idea what's going on, this is Candlepin bowling. It's a lot like if you're familiar with 10-pin bowling, but this is the New England and Canadian variant of bowling in which the pins are skinnier, the balls are smaller, and the game is generally much more difficult. It is a lower scoring game, but there's a lot more variance and a lot more. You're sort of chasing the potential thrill of being the first person to ever bowl a 300 because it's never been bowled in 10 pins so far. That's a 10 box for Bryan Hebert, putting him at 69 after 7. A lot of bowlers will generally average around the 80s and 90s, and some of the best bowlers average between 115 to 130. That's at the very top of the range. And the highest game of bowling hasn't really been bowled since the early 2010s. I believe it was 245, bowled by Chris Sargent last and Ralph Sem prior to that. And since then, we haven't had any updates on the all-time highest Candlepin single string thrown. I believe we had a 190-something bowled here at Leda Lanes last year by Nick Leach. And that's going to be an 8 box for Bryan Hebert in the 8th. That's going to be 77 after 8 for Bryan Hebert. He has to get to 86 to tie, 87 to take 2 points. A tie is 1 point. So Bryan Hebert at 77 after 8. With 2 to go here at Leda Lanes in Nashua, New Hampshire. Bryan Hebert winding up on lane 6. He fires off the right of the head pin once again, taking out 2. Not a whole lot to show for himself there. Leda Lanes is located what used to be called the Kahala Chinese Restaurant. Look at that spare by Bryan, right in the pocket, takes out everything else. He certainly wishes that was the first ball. Like it's kind of like strike practice right there. Anyways, Leda is located to what used to be called the Kahala Chinese Restaurant and was later known as the Grand Buffet. Both restaurants are now gone. There is nothing there. The building has been demolished. The Kahala in particular was often advertised during the WNDS Stars and Strikes show. So Bryan will fill that spare with 6. Pins fell slowly, but if they fall, they fall. So he has the 1, the 9, the 10, and the 6 pins on lane 6. He's carefully analyzing that. Well, let's take a look at it ourselves here. I need to fix this camera too. There we go. And will he get another spare? Again, slow falling pins. And that 6 pin's going to be stubborn. It was a good bid, but couldn't quite get the action he was looking for. Bryan Hebert for the 10 box now. It's going to be a 9 box. He's going to conclude the 4th game with a 102. Again, batting 1,000. Bryan Hebert with 6 points so far. A 3-game total of 304 for Bryan Hebert. Averaging over 100, averaging higher than his normal season average of 96.0. Todd Holbrook struggling. After 3 games, he has a 3-game total of 263, 87, 90, and 86. He hasn't taken any points today. Bryan Hebert with a 107, a 95, and 102 after 3 games. And we are definitely looking forward to moving on to the 4th game. Now, Todd Holbrook already starting off, wasting no time, taking out 1 pin, the 6 pin specifically. Some might call that a lemon drop. Todd Holbrook on lane 5, another bouncy ball, but it connects with a pocket this time. Left side check mark. The 2, the 4, the 5, and the 7 pins are left on the deck. 6, 7, 8, 9, or 10 box for Todd Holbrook on lane 5. He takes 1 more for the road. That's a 7 box for Todd Holbrook to start out. 7 after 1 in the 4th. If you're interested in some Candlepin bowling tournaments you might want to get in on or check out, this is the Candlepin calendar for March 24. We have the skins taping tomorrow, as well as several other events and tournaments. One in particular I'd like to call out is the annual Best Box Tournament at Boutwell's Bowling Center on Sunday, March 17th at 11 a.m. It's a doubles tournament in which you find a partner and the best box wins, and you try to build the best string, and you're going to be competing with tons of other teams. The total average per doubles team is not to exceed 230. Todd Holbrook, ooh, that was a hard-fought 7 box he went to war for. 2 7s in a row, 14 after 2 for Todd Holbrook. 2nd box of the 4th game. Let's take a look at this real quick while you have a chance. So this is a bunch of stuff left in March, and I want to particularly call out on the 31st we have Ray's Easter Classic. That's going to be here at Leda Lanes. I believe there may still be slots open, but they're only guaranteed to those who prepay. Check out Alexis Howard-Booley on Candlepin Chat. She has a mega thread post about the Easter Classic. If you are interested in joining, I recommend you check that out sooner rather than later, and you get the payment in so you can have a spot guaranteed. That is a spare for Todd Holbrook. Not a spare, a 10 box. If I can count balls correctly, that's 24 after 3 for Todd Holbrook. On lane 5, Leda Lanes in Nashua, New Hampshire. Bryan Hebert 12th overall in the wild card. Todd Holbrook 16th overall in the wild card. I think Bryan Hebert may still be able to squeak in there if he can bowl several more shutout matches, and today he has done exactly that up to the 3rd game. Todd Holbrook with another lemon drop left side takes out the 4. Second ball is a little bit more favorable, leaving the 1, the 2, the 4, the 9, and the 7 pins on the deck for a potential 10 box. But it's going to be a 6 box for Todd Holbrook. He's struggling a little bit. That's 30 after 4. Excuse me, a 5 box, not a 6 box. 29 after 4 for Todd Holbrook. Todd Holbrook has really been struggling so far. Don't like to repeat myself that much, but really that's the fact of life right now for Todd. He's been missing the head pin off to the left a lot, but this time he misses it less, leaving the 4 horsemen left side. 6 down, 4 up. For the spare, Holbrook on the head pin a little bit too full. He connects with the head pin directly and takes it out by sending it directly back, not colliding with any of the other pins. 1 more down. That's an 8 box for Todd Holbrook to conclude his first half with 37. A disappointing 37 for Todd Holbrook. That 5 box really kind of dragged him down a little bit. So that concludes 4.5 games for Todd Holbrook for a 4.5 game total of 300. Bryan Hebert at 304 after just 4 games without even starting out, or after 3 games without even starting out the 4th game. Now he does. Bryan Hebert off the head pin to the left, leaving the 1, the 2, the 6, 1, 3, 6, and the 8 pins on the deck. Bryan Hebert, 4 spare. Let's see what he can do. Bryan Hebert fires just off of the 1, 3 pocket, leaving only the 1 pin. That would have definitely been a spare if he had collided with the head pin or nudged it down or one of those. That's going to be a 9 box for Bryan Hebert to start out the 4th. 9 after 1 compared to 7 after 1 for Todd Holbrook. Give you another chance to look at the upcoming events and calendars. We got the skins taping tomorrow here at Leda Lanes, Candlepin Skins, where qualifiers of a roll-off compete in the skins ladder tournament, bake-off, whatever it is. It's a fun time. Basically, the skins format is you want to bowl the best box possible and hope you beat your opponent. And you compete for money, you win a skin, you win money, and it's a whole thing. I know I will be bowling in it, and a bunch of other folks will be too. I believe Nick Leach, Aaron St. Cyr, Justin Lines, and if I'm forgetting anyone else, please fill that in for me in the comments. Anyways, that's an 8 box for Bryan Hebert, 17 after 2 for Bryan Hebert. Compare that to 14 after 2 for Todd Holbrook. My apologies if my voice is getting drowned out occasionally. I'm trying to compete with a very loud radio speaker above me. So Bryan taking out just a few pins here. And by a few, I believe it's just 4. Yes, it is 4. And that's a couple more down for the road. He's got 7 down, 3 up. The 1, the 8, and the 6 pins on the deck for Bryan. Trying to get a 7, 8, 9, or 10 box now. It's going to be an 8 box for 25 after 3 for Bryan Hebert. 25 after 3 for Bryan Hebert. Compare that to Todd Holbrook, who had 24 after 3. So this match is a little bit tighter than previous ones. Got Bryan Hebert on lane 5. Opening ball of the 4th frame. He fires. He's direct, a little bit too full on the head pin, dropping 6. The 2, the 6, the 4, and the 7 pins on the deck. Difficult split. The 2-6 pocket is probably the one he wants to go for. He only takes out the 6 pin. Sorry, the 3-6 pocket, not the 2-6 pocket. 3, 4, 7 pins. He's going to take a 9 box for 34 after 4 for Bryan Hebert. We got some other tournaments, of course, going on. If you don't live too close to Leda, you live down in Millis, just the Millis once a month. Coming up after the a day after the skins taping. Bryan with a right side lemon drop. No, it's not a lemon drop. I believe 2 fell, not 1. So he gets away from the donation. Bryan Hebert for a spare now. He made this before. Let's see if he can get on the pocket. But he can't. He takes a few more out. 5 down, 5 up. 1, 3, 4, 7, 10. For the 10 box to sit on something good, hopefully. He's going to take a 7 for 41 after 5. Compared that to Todd Holbrook's 37 half. This match is a little bit more tight. Neither bowler has bowled any marks in this 4th game out of 5, but we'll see where we go here in this Friday afternoon here at Leda Lanes in Nashua, New Hampshire. This Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour Class D North match between Todd Holbrook versus Bryan Hebert. I'm Steve Kelly. Glad to have you along with us, as always, if you're just tuning in to this live stream broadcast, or if you're watching this later after some time after the conclusion of this broadcast. Todd Holbrook dropping 6, and that will be a spare for Todd Holbrook. A well-deserved spare. Really glad he got that one. He was really fishing for a mark, especially after the last game where he had a really frustrating 86, but Todd Holbrook now on the board with a mark. The first bowler of this 4th game to have a mark, I might add. 47 plus a ball for Todd Holbrook. Todd Holbrook fires lane 6. He's going to take more than 5. It's going to be a 6 fill. That's the best fill he's had all day. 53 after 6 for Todd Holbrook. The 1, the 4, the 7, and the 8 pins on the deck. Let's see what Todd Holbrook can do now. 1, 4, 7, 8. Let's say if he carefully caresses that head pin, it'll go. but he misses the head pin, unfortunately. Takes out just a few in the back row. The 1 and the 8 pins are left on the deck on lane 6. Leda lanes at Nashua, New Hampshire. Todd Holbrook fires, and that's going to be an 8 box. 8 box for Todd Holbrook. 61 in 7 for Todd Holbrook. If you're just tuning in, appreciate you watching. This is the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour, a season-long series of one-on-one Candlepin bowling matches between challengers organized into classes and divisions competing for playoff contention. The Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour, or ACST, is a season of Candlepin bowling in which everyone's sorted into classes and divisions from A to D based on total bowlers as well as averages of the bowlers. Each matchup against 2 bowlers is a scratch match, which means there are no handicaps or other assistive point value modifiers other than what we see here in the live matches. That's an 8 box for Todd Holbrook with 69 after 8. There is a maximum of 14 available points per match. 2 points are awarded to the winner of each game. The winner whose cumulative total is the highest results in an additional 4 points awarded. A tie and a string will award each bowler 1 point. The D class of the ACST is a north and a south half with 4 divisions between the 2 of them. Each class presently has roughly 32 bowlers with 16 in north and 16 in south. That's going to be just a miss on the spare opportunity for Todd Holbrook. For the 10 box, just the 5 pin. That's a 10 for Todd Holbrook. He really wanted that spare. I could hear it in his vocal inflection. That's 79 after 9 for Todd Holbrook. And he's now looking at, he's probably going to need a mark to reach his season average of 92.3 at this point. Todd Holbrook's final first ball of the 4th game is on the head pin, leaving all but the 5 pin. An excellent first ball. Excellent spare leave opportunity here. He just has to throw another ball down the center at the 5 pin, which is just directly behind where the head pin normally stands. Todd Holbrook for the spare, the single pin spare. Will the wood help him? Oh no, he just misses it off to the left. Oh, Todd. Anyways, he's looking at a 9 or 10 box to conclude his 4th game. For a potential 89, it's going to be an 88 for a 9 box. To conclude the 4th, Bryan stands to take another 2 here if he can beat 88. Nothing is ever set in stone until it is done, but that's where we stand right now. Bryan Hebert at a 41 half here in the 4th. Todd Holbrook concluding his 4th game with an 88. Bryan Hebert starting out first ball of lane 6, box 6. First ball of the 2nd half. Drops 6. The 3, the 6, the 4, and the 7 pins. With a very leany 3 pin. Collides with a piece of wood that doesn't affect anything. Looking at a 6, 7, 8, 9, or 10 box. I have no idea why that little thumbs up just showed up, but life's little mysteries. There it is again. 6 box for Bryan Hebert. Really, I have honestly no idea why that's showing up. I think that's sometimes a webcam thing or something triggering that. I don't know. Have fun with that, I guess. Bryan Hebert, first ball showing up is... Oh my god. I have to figure out what that is. He's off to the left of the head pin and takes out just a few more. And the second ball, same thing happens. My god, that is annoying. I think it's a webcam thing. 7 box for Bryan Hebert. For 54 and 7, both bowlers are kind of having a bit of a sleepy second game here. That's 54 after 7 for Bryan Hebert. Compare that to Todd Holbrook's 61 after 7. Todd Holbrook is up at this point in the match. Bryan Hebert now looking to get something started here on lane 6 in the 4th game. He's done a great job up to this point, but he just has to continue doing so. And he'll be looking pretty good in the wildcard standings if everything lines up correctly. 7 drop for Bryan Hebert. And the 7 drop will remain after 2 balls. That is the 3, the 5, and the 6 pins on lane 6. Leda Lanes in Nashua, New Hampshire. One more down. That's an 8 box for Bryan Hebert. No marks for Bryan, just 6, 7s, 8s, and 9s for 62 after 8. Bryan Hebert may stand to not take 2 points this game if he can't rustle up just a few more pins, but we'll see where he takes us. He has to get 26 pins across these 2 boxes to tie, 27 to win. Takes 5 more. 4, no, not 5. 4, 5. Takes 3 out. Optical illusion out there. Takes a few more out, and he's got the 5, the 6, the 3, and the 7 pins to contend with for a 10 box now. Take another look at that up close. He has to break the triangle just the right way, just like that. Almost goes as planned, but he will take a 9 box. 71 after 9 for Bryan Hebert now. And Bryan needs a mark to continue his shutout, but it might end here if he doesn't get a mark. So let's see what Bryan can do. He's scored no marks this game so far. Bryan Hebert on lane 6, off to the right of the head pin. Drops 5. The 1, the 2, the 4, the 8, and the 10 pins are left on the deck right now. For the spare, Bryan Hebert. For a spare, this is important. He needs this spare, and he hits full on the object pin. Unfortunately, it shoots straight back, doesn't take out anything else. He's now looking at a 6, 7, 8, 9, or 10, so Todd Holbrook will be taking points today. That's a 7 box for Bryan. That puts him at 78 after 10. Todd Holbrook is on the board with 2 points this match so far. So after 4 games, Bryan Hebert is at 382. After 4 games, Todd Holbrook is at 351. Bryan Hebert has bowled a 107, a 95, a 102, and a 78. Todd Holbrook has bowled an 87, a 90, an 86, and an 88. And now we are going to move on to the 5th and final game. So I'll remind you about the 5th and final game. The 5th and final game is important because it is a bowler's last chance to go for the total. The total is worth 4 points. As of 4 games, Bryan's at 382 and Todd Holbrook is at 351. So it's not a runaway. Bryan has the match by 31. If Bryan has a really low game and Todd has a really high game, that can shift the balance. Todd Holbrook nearly getting a spare there, leaving all but the 10 pin after the second ball. Todd Holbrook going for a 10 box, and it looks like it's going to be a 9 box for Todd Holbrook. That's a fouled 9 box. Ball went into the gutter and came out and took the pin out. That doesn't count. So that's a 9 box for Todd Holbrook. Todd Holbrook, as I mentioned earlier, after 13 matches bowled so far, he has a record of 50 and 132. His high single 120, high series 509. And that might be the first spread eagle of the day, actually. So the spread eagle, there's a couple ways to get it, but this is the traditional one, the 4-pin spread eagle, taking out the 1, the 5, the 8, and the 9 pins. Todd Holbrook was trying to hope he can slice the right half out, but instead we just have a very injured eagle out there. It's a 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, or 10 for Todd Holbrook, and it's going to be a 7 box. 16 after 2 for Todd Holbrook now. With 3 to go before he sits at the half. So, folks, if you like this content, again, check out Candlepin Bowling Network on YouTube later on tonight for the Friday Night Pro League live stream. And then on Candlepin Corner, we have Candlepin Skins. It's not a show that's streamed live, but there are episodes that are uploaded, and we still have at least one more episode that is yet to be aired, and then we're filming brand new ones tomorrow morning at Leda Lanes if you want to see the show filmed live. Todd Holbrook struggling to get something started here. Just looking at a potential 3 box if he misses one more time. Todd Holbrook for a 10 box. He's going to take a 6 box for 22 after 3. Mr. Todd Holbrook. Again, check out a local bowling center on candlepin.org. Click Go Bowling if you want to give this sport a try and experience the frustration and the highs and the lows and everything that comes with it, along with us. Plenty of bowling centers in New England and Canada as well. Candlepin.org is definitely the place to check it out. That's a spare for Todd Holbrook. Speaking of highs and lows, let's talk about a high. That's a spare for Todd Holbrook. 32 plus a ball after 4 with 1 to go. before he sits here in the 5th and final game. Todd Holbrook secured that 32 that he was down, but Bryan has yet to bowl, so we're going to see how he does. That looks like a 4 fill, I believe. So 36 after 4 for Todd Holbrook. I'd say that's spareable. He's got the 4 horsemen right side along with the 5 and the 9 pins to deal with. Has to basically hit the 1-3 pocket the right way to take it out, and he misses the 1-3 pocket. He's left with 3 pins left on the deck, the 1, the 5, and the 10 pins for a 7, 8, 9, or 10 box. Todd Holbrook on lane 5 at Leda Lanes in Nashua, New Hampshire. That is a full shot on the 1 and the 5. That's a 9 box for 45 after 5 for Todd Holbrook. And Bryan Hebert will now be stepping up to the approaches of lane 5 at Leda Lanes. Again, let's check out the upcoming events calendar. Again, Skins Taping is the one that's immediately happening tomorrow, and then the following Sunday we have the Best Box Tournament up in Concord, the Millis Once a Month on the 10th, and a whole bunch of others. There's also a Metro Bowl once a month down in Peabody, Massachusetts. Check that out as well if you're down in the Salem, Swampscott, Danvers area. Bryan Hebert dropping 6 on his opening ball of the 5th and final game, and he will get a spare off of that. A nice little delicately placed pocket shot to put him on the board with a mark for the 5th and final game here. Todd Holbrook almost got that, but he fouled out a 9 on the first. Hebert filling a spare. I think he threw it a little bit too hard to collide with the pocket, but he will fill it with 5 at least. 4 horsemen right side plus the 8 pin. Oops. 4 horsemen right side plus the 8 pin, that is. And right on the pocket, but the pins just didn't fall in favor of getting another spare. That is Candlepin for you. I'll tell you, that is what happens in Candlepin. If you're watching this and thinking, hey, these guys can hit these, and you've never bowled before, trust me, it's much, much harder than it looks. Anyways, Bryan Hebert is now looking at an 8, 9, or 10 box opportunity on lane 5 at Leda Lanes. Red lines the piece of wood, and he will take an 8 box for 23 after 2. Compare that to 16 after 2 by Todd Holbrook. Bryan Hebert, opening ball of the 3rd frame. Lane 5 on the 1-3 pocket, nearly a strike. Leaving the 4 pin on the deck, standing alone. Single pin spare for Bryan Hebert. That piece of wood will not help him. For the single pin spare, and the ball doesn't quite go to the left enough. A little bit too straight. A little bit too straight down the center. 4 pin for a 10 box. There it is. That's the 3 ball spare for Bryan Hebert. But unfortunately, we only call that a 10 box. Some might call that a Paul Grant special. Anyways, so we're at Leda Lanes. Like I said, 36 lanes, about 64 years of age. All wood approaches, all wood lanes with automatic scoring, poker, karaoke, billiards, cornhole. Yes, there are cornhole leagues at Leda Lanes. Actually, I believe later tonight the cornhole folks will be here, and I've been here once for one of those nights, and this place gets busy. If you like cornhole, despite this looking like a bowling alley, it becomes a cornhole alley on certain nights. It's Bryan Hebert with a 7 drop. The 1, the 3, and the 9 pins left on the deck, and that's going to be a 10 box, a hard-fought 10 box for Bryan Hebert. Second 10 in a row, that's going to be 43 after 4 for Bryan Hebert. Compare that to 36 after 4 for Todd Holbrook. And we have a match, folks. Although Todd Holbrook is going to have to get a lot of marks to really go for the total now at this point. Bryan Hebert, opening ball. That's a strike. That's the first strike in the match. It took 4.5 games to get there, but Bryan Hebert will sit on a strike 53 after 5. Bryan even made a comment saying it took this long just to get there, but that's a strike for Bryan Hebert. Strikes can be pretty rare in the Candlepin bowling world. Todd Holbrook now looking to bowl his final half of the final game here at Leda Lanes. So Leda Lanes used to be where WNDS Candlepin Stars and Strikes was filmed before the show ended. All wood approaches, all wood lanes. Kegler's Den is always awesome. It's actually just a few feet to the left of me. Lots of taps, plenty of drinks, great atmosphere. And Todd Holbrook will drop 8 with a 7-10 split plus wood. I don't know if any of that wood will be really favorable unless he caps the right side wood, but he sails the ball right through the center, taking out nothing. Again, it's a 7-10 split. I really think his only hope of taking this out is trying to cap that right side wood on the left side, but it's going to be an 8 box for Todd Holbrook. In the 6, 53 after 6 for Todd Holbrook. He had 45 after 5, but Bryan Hebert bowled a strike to conclude his first half. So he's at an open 53, and he also had to spare with a 5 fill to start out the game. Todd Holbrook on the pocket. Slow-moving 8 drop. The 8 and the 10 pins on the deck. This will be a difficult spare opportunity for Todd Holbrook. He's got a piece of wood in front of the 4 pin, but I don't know how favorable that's going to be. Let's see how Todd Holbrook plays it. Holbrook, he misses. Into the gutter to the left. Careens around the pin safely for no foul. But now he's looking at an 8, 9, or 10 box. Mr. Holbrook. It's going to be a 9 box for Todd Holbrook for 62 after 7. 62 after 7 for Todd Holbrook. In case you missed it, here's some of the standings. Both bowlers in 4th place in Division 4 and Division 1. Bryan Hebert stands to probably gain a few points back for the match. Todd Holbrook dropping 7 on lane 6. The 4 horsemen right side minus the head pin. The 3, the 6, and the 10 pins on lane 6. Makeable spare opportunity for Todd Holbrook. Will he get it, though? Nearly does. Wow, that ball was pinballing all around the lane after that cap of the wood. I thought it was going to go, but some things just don't happen, you know? Todd Holbrook for the 10 box now. He's going to take a 9 box. 9 box for 71. 71 after 8 for Mr. Todd Holbrook. Thanks for bearing with me while I just fix that pin cam there. 71 after 8 for Todd Holbrook. He really needs to get some marks to make some things happen. He's doing better on the first ball. He's colliding with the head pin in the pocket a little bit more often, but just the leaves he's getting are just not favorable. This is what is called the right side setback. This is the 5 and the 10 pins left on the deck with some wood. You have to hit the 5 pin in such a way that it will slide right, or a piece of wood will slide right to take out the 10. With that piece of wood between the 5 and the 10, I think this is makeable. He just has to aim the ball correctly to get that right side of the 5 pin. You can hit it on the left, but the right side is going to be more favorable. He's going for the left, but he still gets it anyway. That's a spare for Todd Holbrook. He definitely needed that spare. He's got 81 plus a ball after 9. 81 plus a ball after 9 for Todd Holbrook. And this is do or die time. A strike, heck, multiple strikes would definitely help him out here. Filling that spare. He's on the pocket. That's a 9 fill, just leaving the 5 pin again. That was a good fill for Todd Holbrook, his best fill of the day. Single pin spare opportunity here. He could get 100 plus a ball if he could take out this 5 pin, but he has to take out this 5 pin in this ball. Todd Holbrook for the spare. Will he get it? He gets it. Just barely. He steals it. Piece of wood just caresses the 5 to go down. He's sitting at 100 at 10. This is his best game of the day. 451 5-game total plus a ball. Let's see if he can add some extra pins here. But he's only up in the match by 16, so I think Bryan is probably likely going to be taking the total. Oh, that's a 2 fill for Todd. Heartbreaker of a fill. That's 102 after 10 for Todd for a 5-game total of 453. His best game was his 5th and last at 102. 87, 90, 86, and 88 for Todd Holbrook. He's up in the match by 18. So Bryan just has to recover those 18 to take the total. Bryan Hebert is filling a strike now, mind you. He sat on the first half with a strike. A little bit too full on the head pin. That's a 5 fill for the first ball of the strike. With a strike fill, you get 2 balls. So he's got 5 on the board, plus this ball. It's effectively worth double. Taking out one more. This is 6 fill total for 59 after 5 for Bryan Hebert. And he's looking at a 6, 7, 8, 9, or 10 box now on lane 6. That's a 7 box. 66 after 6 for Bryan Hebert. With 4 to go. He just has to recover 5 to take the match, and that will be 4 points. And if he can get to 103, it's a complete shutout for Bryan Hebert. Definitely a success story for Bryan Hebert. He's been having a lot of trouble lately securing a lot of points per match, but today he's got a bit of a redemption arc, so definitely helpful for him. Before we wrap things up today, I just want to give a couple special thanks. The ACST League Commissioner Danny Finn, Next Gen Stats powered by Micah Imparado, Bryan Hebert, who is bowling. Thank you for the statistical graphics used in this podcast. He designed the PowerPoint slides and kind of gave me the aesthetic and design choices used for this broadcast. Staff at Leda Lanes in Nashua, New Hampshire. And, of course, you for watching. So thank you for watching. And, anyways, I'll get back to scoring here. That's a 9 box for Bryan for 75 after 7. Here at Leda Lanes in Nashua, New Hampshire, just finishing up the home stretch. Bryan Hebert almost with another strike. The 5 pin again, the last pin standing, and it was wiggling even. Single pin spare for Bryan Hebert. Let's see if he can get this. Single pin spares can be psychologically difficult. Let's see if he'll get it. Oh, he just misses it off to the left. See, like I said, the psychologically difficult part. Now watch, I bet he might get this on the retry. And look at that, the retry is the 3-ball spare. The Paul Grant special, 85 after 8 for Bryan Hebert. And he has the match by 14, so that's going to be another 4 for Bryan Hebert, and he just needs to get 102 to tie and 103 to take all 14 points today. Sorry, not all 14, 12 points. Wow. If I could remember that Todd actually took the 4th game. So, you know what? Everything I said about the shutout, just kidding. Todd does have points. Todd has 2 points. Mea culpa on that one. Bryan Hebert dropping 5. 4 horsemen left side, plus the 8 pin. Little full on the head pin with 4 left on the deck for a 6, 7, 8, 9, or 10 box. Yeah, Todd Holbrook does have 2 points. So, excuse me on that one. My apologies. 6 box for Bryan Hebert. So, you know what? Actually, potentially Todd might take 4. Todd might take 4 points. So, it might be a 10-4 situation here. 10-4, good buddy. Bryan Hebert, final first ball of this 5-game series is wildly off to the left, taking out 2 pins and 2 pins only. He's made this spare before. Let's see if he can get it again. On the pocket, that is a spare by Bryan Hebert. Beans it. 101. So actually now it's interesting. He needs 1 pin to tie, 2 pins to win. As little as a half Worcester will be the additional 2 pins for Bryan. 2 points, that is. Final ball, the bonus ball. 483 5-game total plus 7. And that will be the 5th game for Bryan, 108. It is going to be 108 to conclude the 5 games for Bryan Hebert for a 5-game total of 490. For Todd Holbrook, he has a 5-game total of 453. And that will be just about it from us at Leda Lanes in Nashua, New Hampshire. Let's just kind of skip on down here to take a look at how we did in terms of the points. So Bryan Hebert will move from 78 and 104 to 90 and 106. See how much a difference of 1 game can make? Todd Holbrook will fall from 50 and 132 to 52 and 144. Bryan Hebert taking 12 points, taking 2 points in all but the 4th game, and of course taking the match total as well with 1 strike and 9 spares. Todd Holbrook taking 2 points in the 4th game, and he had no strikes today. He had 8 spares and 7 tens. Bryan Hebert had 5 tens, averaging 98 for the match. Todd Holbrook averaging 90.6 for the match. Both bowlers with a perfect box percentage of 30 today, but it came down to the spares, the fills, everything that came with it. But anyways, that is the point spread. That is the match. Congratulations to Bryan Hebert. So that'll be it from us at Leda Lanes today. If you're new to the world of Candlepin bowling content, thanks for watching, and I hope that this was a pleasant viewing experience for you. If you enjoy what you saw and want to see more, I invite you to strike, comment, and subscribe to the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour page on Facebook, as well as Candlepin Bowling Network, Candlepin Corner, Alley Chat, Bowling Nerd Network, and I believe that's everything, where all kinds of other videos, streams, and productions are regularly posted in addition to results and statistics. Particularly tonight, we have the Friday Night Pro League on Candlepin Bowling Network. It'll be live streamed to YouTube. Check it out there. And we also have Candlepin Skins on Candlepin Corner. New episodes will be filmed tomorrow live at Leda Lanes if you want to stop by physically. And that should be about it. So if you're a returning viewer, of course, great to have you along once again. Hope you enjoyed this program. If you're into podcasts, there's also Candlepin shows such as The Approach and Ripping the Rack, so check those out if you feel so inclined. I've been Steve Kelly, along with Bryan, Hebert, and Todd Holbrook, and I hope you have a fantastic night. Have a great one, everybody.